Welcome to Feed Your Lion. I'm Dr. Jodelle Yount, and I'm here to aid you in the mastery of total health, spiritual, mental, emotional, physical, and financial. So prepare to have your wellness tank filled up with this podcast. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Feed Your Lion podcast. Today it's me, myself, and I. I'm going to give you a little bit more about my background and history, and just so you know a little bit more about me. And I'm also going to give you a talk that I did for a women's ministry group last week. The things that I've struggled with a little bit in my spiritual journey, and also some of the things I really realized and been seeking after in the last year or two. So we'll go into that. But first, I'm just going to tell you a little bit more, because I don't think in any of the other podcasts I've really kind of done a true introduction. So I figured since we've been out for a little over a year now, that it's a good time to do that. So I'm actually originally from Circleville, Ohio. If anybody has heard of the pumpkin show, that is pretty much all we're known for in the Circleville area. We actually got out of high school that whole week to do the pumpkin show, which is great. But anyway, so I grew up there. I was always a little bossy, a little defiant, always in trouble for talking back. And that really hasn't changed much in life as I've gotten older. For those of you who like the Enneagram, which I really do, it's kind of funny because they always, even when I came out of the womb, my mom was like, you were screaming bloody murder compared to your brother. And I was ready to go, my brother and I are totally opposite. But my Enneagram is number 8, which is the challenger, which is kind of funny and they said you may have been bossy as a kid in the description. I was like, yeah, that fits pretty well. So I grew up in a very Christian home. My dad's side, they came from a Pilgrim Holiness background. So my grandfather on my dad's side was a Pilgrim Holiness preacher, actually. All the relatives there were in the Harlan, Kentucky, coal miners town area. And then on my mom's side, we were Church of Christ Christian Union. So had a very Christian conservative upbringing. And from after high school, I went to Mount Vernon Nazarene. So I went to a Nazarene university. And from there on, I went to the medical school. I went to OU for my med school. I have been a lifelong student, never been out of school. I'm currently working on master's number 4. So, at the end of med school, while I was doing my residency, I did a master's in public health. I've done a master's in science with a concentration in clinical toxicology. I recently had finished up my master's in business, so my MBA. And now I'm working on a master's in nutrition and it's functional health and nutrition, basically. So lifelong student, lifelong nerd, lots of interest outside of that. You guys know from my previous talks that I have L.I.O.N Health and Wellness. So we do a variety of health services, and we keep growing with that. I also do the yountbox.com, which is t-shirts and things like that. I really like staying healthy. My whole mantra that I say to myself literally every day is, I am the master of my spiritual, mental, social, emotional, physical, and financial health, and I'm leading others to do the same. And that's what this podcast really is about, is that full person health. And that's why I started this, is to influence other people in a positive way and to bring that total health, that total person to fruition for other people as well as myself. So as far as in the physical realm, I'm a lifter. You guys have seen me on here with Eden and Nikki and Brittany, those guys. We have the basement and do a lot of lifting. I'm into martial arts. You guys have seen me with my Chuck Norris system instructor on here, and you can check him out. I'm going to get my jiu-jitsu instructor on here too, Bill Yates, who the fighter that was on here. That's he's worked with Phil too, but I'll get him. He does the jiu-jitsu side as well. So I also like to dance. Jocelyn and I take dance classes. The travel, I'm a writer. I have a couple books out working on that. So I have lots of interest. So kind of going into the spiritual realm, over the years, I've had a lot of struggles. You've heard me and Preston before talking about, growing up in a really conservative household, and being gay was a struggle in the Christian realm for a long time for me. I've had several, like, as I've studied the Bible and things, like several things with, like, the God of the Old Testament versus the God of the New, and how much, literal destruction, like the Bible is one of the bloodiest books. And I really struggled with that from a perspective of, okay, God is love and things like that. But yet, God's also a God of wrath and destruction. And we see that throughout Scripture. And so I've struggled with that. A lot of the Old Testament, like laws and regulations, and over and over again, sacrifices, that kind of stuff. I've struggled with those things. Other paths to God, other religions, I think all the time, if I, was born somewhere else, maybe I'd be Hindu or Muslim, if that's what I was born into and that was the family I came to. And, saying, oh, one side's wrong and one side's right, that was a struggle for me, because depending on where you were born and where you came from, it might be a different path that you walk. So I've struggled with that. I've struggled with being enough and doing enough. I think as somebody who's always, I've always been motivated and ambitious, and I've always felt like it's never enough. Recently, Jocelyn and I were actually, she was telling me about the Dragon Ball Z story, which is like an anime show. I never watched it, but she was talking about there is this character called Goku, and there was another one that started with a V. I don't even know his name, but anyways, they could get to a certain place in their realm of expertise that they can become enlightened, right? And in the anime show, when they had this path of enlightenment, they lit up with like this brilliant glow, and they got all these other powers and stuff. So as she explained it to me, and I'm probably butchering this, so if you like anime, don't hate me for this, but I'm trying to summarize as best I can here. But Goku, I guess, was kind of a chill guy. He liked his family. He was kind of easygoing and relaxed, and the enlightenment thing just kind of happened for him. He was he was just doing his thing, and he achieved this enlightenment. Now, the V guy was a little bit more of the antagonist, but you kind of felt for him. He was like that mild villain that you actually kind of felt for and kind of liked. And the man was a doer. I mean, he tried and tried and tried everything to reach this path of enlightenment. I mean, did everything under the sun. And finally, he got to that point of pure frustration, and he just sat in the middle of the field, and he said, I'm done. I'm not going to try anything anymore. I'm done with all this. And of course, what happens at that moment? He achieves enlightenment. He gets the bright glow. He gets the power. And I think that's really spot on to how a lot of people are sometimes in their relationship with God or spirit or whatever whatever your relationship in the spiritual realm is. I think sometimes we try, and we always feel like we're not good enough. And sometimes it's just about letting go of all that and just, letting God, letting that relationship be, and just letting go of all this exterior craziness and all this pressure, because that's not really God. Like, we put that on ourselves, or we have these expectations on us, and just letting it go and just being in the presence of God. So I think that's something that I've struggled with as well over the years. And so finally, and the thing I want to really like focus on with this talk is faith. Like, I've kind of struggled when people say all the time, oh, just take a leap of faith, take a leap of faith. What does that actually mean in like practice? Like, we're not very rarely, or, we're not going and flinging ourselves off mountaintops, like that kind of stuff. Like, what does that actually mean to step out in faith? What does that look like in your actual walk with God? So how do we step out in faith? So, actual definition, we're talking about believing in something that we can't see. We're talking about, seeing something beyond the physical realm or believing in something beyond the physical realm. So when you take that to a religious standpoint, a belief and trust in God without any obvious proof. Now, I think there's plenty of proof when you look at the complexities and the intricacies and all the things that you see in life, that I think it's amazing that people don't think there's a creator when we actually really look at nature and even like the complexities of our own bodies. But still, like, that's the actual definition. So I'm going to kind of go on a little tangent with this one, but this has kind of helped me understand what faith looks like. So a lot of times we as humans, we desire things, we desire to see changes apart from actually changing ourselves. We think that we can continue to do the same thing and see different results, which is, right, the definition of insanity. But we think that if we put in the same inputs, we can get a different output. And that's just not the case. Think of it in terms of, say, hey, I have a garden and every week I give you a bushel of potatoes and in return you give me $20, right? Well, that's the same input. If I give you a bushel of potatoes, I get $20. Why then would I expect, hey, I'm going to give you a bushel of potatoes and now you're going to give me $50, right? Your input has not changed, so your output is not going to change. So we're wanting these things. We're wanting these, more money. We want a better life. We want a better relationship, all these things. But in our bodies and our minds and our spirits, we haven't actually put ourselves in the position or changed to where we're ready and able to receive those actual gifts. So how's faith? I'm getting to how faith plays into this, but there is plenty of evidence that we actually have the power to change ourselves. We have the power to change our mindset. We have the power to change our circumstances. We have a lot more power than we give ourselves credit for. God is within us, right? We are divine creatures. And if you actually look at our makeup, less than 0.01% of us is actually matters, is actually in this physical realm, but we spend so much time on that. The rest of us is energy. Like the whole universe, we're made up of energy, and that is mainly what we're comprised of. It's very little that this actual matter, these few things that you can feel and touch. So they did some experiments. I was reading this book. It was something, actually, let me look so I can tell you, because this is a great book for a reference point. If you guys want to look this up, let me just pull it up on my Audible real quick. It's called Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. It's Dr. Joe Dispenza. Excellent read. But he's talking about the whole concept of what I'm going over now. But in it, he was saying that they did this experiment with DNA, and they had 3 groups. The first group had just negative thoughts. They were, angry, sad, whatever, but they were trying to unravel this DNA that they had in a test tube in their hand. The second group, they had positive thoughts, but they had no intention. They were just thinking good thoughts, but no intention about the DNA itself. And then the third group had the positive, happy, joyous, gratitude thoughts, whatever it was, and the intention of unraveling that DNA. The third group in the couple hours was able to actually unravel that DNA by the intention and the positive thoughts. And there's so many examples like this in science. It's a proven thing. I'm not just like telling you a bunch of BS about the universe. Like, we do have the power to impact change. But when you feel your body and your mind, it all has to be in alignment. So when those things aren't in alignment and there's these same negative patterns and negative cycles, you can't really affect that change. So you really have to, and however you do this, meditation, visualization, whatever it is, you have to go to a place where you're aligned, body, mind, and spirit, and hey, this is the person I want to be. Okay, that's your future self that you want to be. You want these things to come true. You have to really feel that in all the senses and all the emotions, and really in your body feel that. And when you come back to yourself after those practices, and you're doing this sometimes over and over again, this is not like a one-off, okay? This is like a practice that you do daily. When you come back to your body, you are that future self right now in the present, okay? There's no future and present me. You are that future self now. You have become changed in your body. You know, if you're wanting more money, you are the person who has more money right now. It's not some future thing. You feel how it's like. You act how it's like. You are that person. You have truly changed. And when your body and your mind get on that same board, and you actually are the change you want to be in the future, guess what? Those things happen. Where faith comes into that is once our energy and our attention has shifted, we're now in that alignment. And God, or the universe, however you look at this, creates a way for you to become that, okay? Because you're living that now. So faith is submitting to the control of God to impact how that change is going to occur. We don't know how it's going to occur, okay? You have to have that submission of this is going to happen. I'm already a changed being. And now you let God do whatever he's going to do, okay? You let the universe, you let all that energy work in your favor, and it will. And the faith happens because you've submitted and you've relented to that, and you've let go. And to me, that is how I now understand faith. That's kind of how I've worked through that. And I feel like I have a much better understanding of faith because of that, okay? So if you don't understand what I'm saying there, just believe you are the person who understands what I'm saying, and you will. You see what I did? See? Okay. I'm being funny now, but we just have to envision and shift who we are. And this is, again, a repeated thing. This might not happen right off the bat the first time you try this, but I'll give another example from the book. He was talking about his daughter wanted this trip to Italy, okay? And maybe you want to go somewhere, maybe you want to travel the world. You put yourself in a place that you've already been there. You are already the person who's traveled there. You've already been there. You've already seen the sights. You've already done that. When you come back to you are in the present, you're somebody who's already experienced all these things. The universe, God, will make a way for that to happen if you truly do that. And you're in alignment, and your energy and your spirit and your body and your mind, and it's all in alignment. And that is a practice that takes time. But that is how I now have come to understand faith. Some of the other things that I'm sure of, more sure of now, again, I told you, I don't see how people think God doesn't exist because of how crazy, like, complex and intricate we are, even just in our bodies. But let me just tell you, if you want to think of how small we really are, how unimportant we really are, let's talk about the universe for 2 seconds. So a light year is not a time thing. It's a distance thing. So 1 light year is 6 trillion miles, okay? 1 light year, 6 trillion miles. Do you know how big the universe is? They think it's 9.2 billion. 9.2 billion light years, okay? Every light year is 6 trillion miles. Think about that. 9.2 billion times 6 trillion is our universe, you guys, in light years, okay? That is, like, so insane to think of how much stuff is actually in the universe. And we think that just happened out of nowhere. Like, I don't know how people can't see that. I mean, and if you really, like, if you think you're some big shot in this world, I have news for you. We are nothing, man. I mean, you compare yourself to the actual size of the universe. We're nothing apart from our Creator. Like, really, that's just compare yourself. Another thing I know for sure is that we do a lot of damage with religion. Religion in general, we try to put God in a box. Oh, you have to do this, and this. We really try to box up God into this little thing, and God cannot be boxed. God talks to people across the universe, across our nations, in different countries, in different cultures, in different religions. God is so much bigger than our box. There's some universal things that I think we could, if we focused on love, like love crosses all those divides. So, you can get along with anybody. You can have a conversation with anybody if love is your focus, and really like doing good by other people and gratitude. And I think we're missing a lot of that in today's world. So those are some things I'm sure. And I think mindset is the key. Aligning that mind, body, spirit is really key to unlocking like true potential and true purpose. So besides all that, a couple things that I have been actively seeking in the last couple years is wisdom and discipline. And before I get into that, actually, I want to just go back to the faith thing for just a minute, because there's some scriptures I want to read that just kind of show, and this is more in the healing realm. But first, there's 3 stories that I think summarize this faith thing pretty good. Matthew 9:27 through 30. After Jesus left the girl's home, 2 blind men followed along behind him, shouting, "Son of David, have mercy on us." They went right into the house where he was staying, and Jesus asked them, "Do you believe I can make you see?" "Yes, Lord," they told him, "we do." Then he touched their eyes and said, "Because of your faith, it will happen." Then their eyes were opened and they could see. Okay? So again, they believed. Jesus was that way. They believed, right? They had faith that they would be seeing men again. All right. Luke 8:42 through 48. All right. As Jesus went with him, he was surrounded by crowds. A woman in the crowds had suffered for 12 years with constant bleeding. She could find no cure. Coming up behind Jesus, she touched the fringe of his robe. Immediately the bleeding stopped. "Who touched me?" Jesus asked. Everyone denied it, and Peter said, "Master, this whole crowd is pressing up against you." But Jesus said, "Someone deliberately touched me, for I felt healing power go out from me." When the woman realized that she could not stay hidden, she began to tremble and fell to her knees in front of him. The whole crowd heard her explain why she had touched him and that she had been immediately healed. "Daughter," he said to her, "your faith has made you well. Go in peace." So, in these instances, I'm going to read you one more with Paul and not Jesus, but these people both, they had a long-term illness, right? Blindness and bleeding. And they didn't settle for that. How many people do you guys know they're like having an illness or struggle and they've just kind of settled into that? It's become their identity. The disease has become like how they identify themselves. Neither of these examples, they didn't identify that way. They saw themselves as well. If they didn't see themselves as well, they would not be actively trying. They would not be actively seeking that healing, right? They didn't know how it was going to come. They had been blind forever. They had been bleeding for 12 years. They did not know how it was going to happen, but they saw themselves as well people. And then by faith, they stepped out, and Jesus was the way that they found that healing. But they hadn't given up. They hadn't accepted that as their identity, okay? So these are examples biblically of what I'm trying to tell you. Finally, let's do one that was actually with Paul. Acts 14, 8 through 10. While they were at Lystra, Paul and Barnabas came upon a man with crippled feet. He had been that way from birth, so he had never walked. He was sitting and listening as Paul preached. Looking straight at him, Paul realized he had faith to be healed. So Paul called to him in a loud voice, "Stand up." And the man jumped to his feet and started walking. Now, I love this one too because, I imagine like Paul in this situation. Like this guy, he's been crippled from birth, right? He's never known what it was to be well, but he still had that picture in his mind. And I just imagine him with this aura around him a little bit. I'm not an aura person. I don't even know what that really means, but I can, there's just some people that just have like a special glow to them. Like you you see a light from him almost, you know? And I imagine that guy sitting there, and he's still got that positive attitude. He still is like, even though he was born crippled, he didn't lose like faith that he would be whole one day. And I just imagine him sitting there, and God worked through Paul to be like, hey, this guy, he hasn't given up, right? And then through his faith, he was healed. And he didn't even do anything. He was sitting there. But in his mind, I truly believe that he saw himself as a well man, and he had faith that it could happen. And then God allowed that to happen, right? So I just think that's cool, because biblically there, you're getting to see that in our play, and you get to see that at work. So anyways, discipline and wisdom, back to that. That is two things that I have been actively seeking. I think there is so much from discipline. I think people look at discipline as like this begrudgingly thing, like, oh, I have to do this thing, or I should do that. Discipline is really the ultimate freedom. When you discipline your body, your mind, your soul, you experience things that you experience so many new levels like of freedom that would never be possible apart from discipline. Again, I was talking to Jocelyn. We were actually, just before I started this podcast, she was talking about an event she just went to as an Aztec. It was a spiritual dance to the moon, all 4 elements. I want to have her on here talking about this, but she said something that is right in line with discipline that I kind of want to share. Through this dance, it's an Aztec dance, there is, you're praying and you're intercessing for other individuals, like you're praying through the whole thing, and you're holding space. It's a very like spiritual thing. And anyway, she was talking about this goes all night long. So she just went last weekend and did this thing, and she'll tell you more about it on podcast. But the point is, you're doing this all night. She was up for like 24 hours dancing, praying, meditating. And she's like, you're getting tired. You're getting hungry. You're like, can I do this? You're sitting in the woods in between dancing on the cold, damp floor, okay, of the woods, okay? And, she's like, you're questioning, can I keep doing this? Can I keep doing this? And the whole time you're supposed to have a positive. So it's gratitude, it's prayers, it's thanksgiving, all of these things. And it's really hard to maintain when those human things of I'm hungry, I'm cold are coming through. But she's like, if you push through that, there's this whole new level of like gratitude and spiritual enlightenment that you get to if you push through that. That is the same thing with any physical thing, pushing through, you hear that? If you really truly live out discipline and you're doing those things that aren't comfortable in the moment, there's this whole new level that you can break through to. And that's really something I'm actively seeking, especially in the nutrition side. I've really struggled. But pushing through to those new points of breakthroughs, I think, is extremely important, and that's what discipline is. So discipline, it's something I'm actively seeking and have been for the last couple of years and my whole life. Just a couple verses on that. Proverbs 15:32. If you reject discipline, you only harm yourself. But if you listen to correction, you grow in understanding. Proverbs 23:23. Get the truth and never sell it. Also get wisdom, discipline, and good judgment. So I think that's a good segue into the other thing that I seek, something I've been seeking for years and that I always will. Wisdom, I think, is something we lack, and I don't think that we actively go after it as much as we should. There's a lot of knowledge, we've got the internet, we've got all this like learned things out there, and that's great. But true wisdom, I think, comes from actual seeking. It comes from listening, and it comes from being in the presence of Creator. And that's something I really, really been going after, in my life, is true understanding, true wisdom. Proverbs 8:11, for wisdom is far more valuable than rubies. Nothing you desire can compare with it. One of my favorite stories is, when Solomon, and you guys are probably aware of this, and I want to read this, but that night, God, this is 2 Chronicles 7, chapter 1, 7 through 12. That night, God appeared to Solomon and said, "What do you want? Ask and I will give it to you." Solomon replied to God, "You showed great faith and love for your father David, and now you have made me king in your place." I misread that, so take this part out. Okay. That night, God appeared to Solomon and said, "What do you want? Ask and I will give it to you." Solomon replied to God, "You showed great and faithful love to David, my father, and now you have made me king in his place. O Lord God, please continue to keep your promise to David, my father, for you have made me king over a people as numerous as the dust of the earth. Give me the wisdom and knowledge to lead them properly. For who could possibly govern this great people of yours?" God said to Solomon, "Because your greatest desire is to help your people, and you did not ask me for wealth, riches, fame, or even the death of your enemies or a long life, but rather you asked for wisdom and knowledge to properly govern my people, I will certainly give you the wisdom and knowledge you requested, but I will also give you wealth, riches, and fame, such as no other king has before you or will ever have in the future." I really, really love that, because Solomon's heart was true before God, and all he wanted was wisdom to lead his people right. And I really want that heart of seeking wisdom and seeking God's voice and things. So I'm telling you that because I want you to have a little bit more insight as to, why I'm doing this podcast, why I'm doing these things, and really where my heart's at with things. Discipline and wisdom and faith are very important to me. So one more verse I want to read to you, and it's out of James, and it kind of combines the wisdom and faith. And it's James 1, and it's 5 through 8. "If you need wisdom, ask our generous God, and he will give it to you. He will not rebuke you for saying, he will not rebuke you for asking. But when you ask him, be sure that your faith is in God alone. Do not waver. For a person with divided loyalty is unsettled as the wave of the sea that is blown and tossed by the wind. Such people should not expect to receive anything from the Lord. Their loyalty is divided between God and the world, and they are unstable in everything they do." I think that's such an important message, not only for me, because, we get tied up with our lives. We get tied up with things that are going on, and I feel like we forget who the true source of all these good things are, who the true source of wisdom is. It's from God and God alone. And regardless of how you see God or how your relationship is, the source comes from God. And if we are truly seeking it and in a right way, and we're not so consumed with everything going on in a worldly state, because there's a lot of stuff out there, guys, a lot of distractions, a lot of negativity, a lot of fighting. And I think it's really important to remember where source comes from, and that we do, because God lives in us, have a lot of power to impact that, a lot of power to change our circumstances, to change our mind, to change our spirit in a way that's in alignment with the purpose for which we've been created. So as I kind of close out this, I want to share the prayer that I've been saying every day for the last year. It's a prayer that I ask God for every day in my own life and my own walk, and I'm gonna read that to you. So, God, I ask for wisdom in all things. I pray for vision in carrying out the purpose for which I have been created. I pray through discipline, self-control, lifelong learning, and sheer will that I develop self-mastery. Through the attainment of self-mastery, along with strength and courage, that I see my mission through. I pray for the right mastermind partners to aid in the accomplishments of these endeavors. For these are the necessities required in carrying forward in persistence, focus, and unwavering determination towards that vision. Be with me, Father, and grant the request of my prayer, so that by faith and your great love I may persist, so that I may complete the work you have laid upon my heart, mind, body, and soul. Amen. So I hope that this, helps somebody out there, or that you at least understand, a little bit more about me and why I'm doing this. And that, maybe this makes you think about something a little bit different. I want to empower you guys to know that you really can impact your life. You can impact other people's lives, and that you were really created for something, and that we're really nothing apart from the purpose for which God created us for. Nothing else really matters. All of these things are so minuscule when you think about how big everything is, okay? So I really hope that encourages you. As always, we're going to end with our quote. This one's Mr. Albert Einstein. Wisdom is not a product of schooling, but of the lifelong attempt to acquire it. And we'll see you the next time.